In this edition of the Red and Blue Political Roundup, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are remembering the late Arizona Senator John McCain. McCain's desk on the floor of the Senate chamber was covered with black and topped with white roses. Senators from both sides of the aisle took time Monday afternoon to share their memories of McCain.
We are fortunate to have known him best in Arizona. But he was bigger than any one state. He always belonged to America and to the world. And now he belongs to the ages. Farewell, Senator. Farewell, John.
As you go through life, you meet a few truly great people. John McCain was one of them. His dedication to his country and to the men and women who serve and protect it was unsurpassed.
For his colleagues here, the time confirmed a sad but obvious truth. The Senate won't be the same without John McCain. Because while John proudly served with us as the Senator for Arizona, he was America's hero all along.
Joining me now from Washington is Sean Sullivan. He's a congressional reporter for the Washington Post. All right, Sean, what legacy does Senator John McCain leave behind on Capitol Hill?
Well, as we heard from, some of those clips right there, I mean, he was beloved by colleagues, both Democratic and Republican, somebody who, really was able to appeal to people in different parties. Of course, a lot of people know him as the Maverick, somebody who was willing to buck his party when he didn't agree with his party. And of course, that caused some controversy last year. One of the last things he's going to be remembered for is his vote against the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare last year, which surprised a lot of people in his party and effectively ended their effort to try to repeal and replace the law, at least for the moment. Of course, his presidential campaign against Barack Obama is certainly going to be something that a lot of people remember, and his national security platform. He was the leader of a traditional hawkish Republican, part of the party that for a lot of years was sort of the dominant prevailing worldview in the Republican Party when it came to national security and foreign policy. So I think he'll be remembered for a lot of those things. And right now, you're seeing people in both parties honor him, and his colleagues express a lot of sadness about his passing.
Well, the White House faced some backlash Monday over the flag at the White House being at full staff versus half staff. Senator James Inhofe had this to say when asked about the issue.
Frankly, I think that John McCain was partially to blame for that, because he was very outspoken that he disagreed with the president in certain areas and wasn't too courteous about it. So yes, one thing about John McCain and the president, they're both very strong-willed people, so I think that was a natural.
Sean, I wonder, are there others on Capitol Hill who feel as Senator Inhofe does? Are many lawmakers blaming the president here?
Well, I think a lot of people were struck by those words from Senator Inhofe to suggest that, Senator McCain was partially to blame for this, at least when you look at the early reaction to it on social media. When it comes to the way Republicans writ large have dealt with President Trump and dealt with his controversial decisions, you're seeing a little bit of something we've seen over and over again when it comes to Republicans and Trump. And today, it seems so far, many Republicans on Capitol Hill, at least in the Senate, have not been willing to forcefully push back against the president, to criticize him openly. They've sort of tried to steer clear of the president's initial decision, at least not to, extend his order and make sure the flag was at half-staff. Of course, he later did that, and now the flag is at half-staff at the White House. But a lot of Republicans have tried to sort of steer clear of that controversy and not get in the middle of a feud, which has continued even after Senator McCain's death. We've seen the president make clear on many occasions that he's not, a fan, a supporter of Senator McCain. And even now, we're seeing, some of, his feelings be expressed in some of the statements we're seeing from him in the White House and from some of the policies. And I think for a lot of Republicans, it's a back and forth that they do not want to be a part of right now.
Well, Well, let's turn to another topic here. President Trump announced that the United States has reached an understanding with Mexico about revising NAFTA. He said discussions with Canada are next. A new trade plan would require congressional approval. What are some of the challenges a new plan would face from lawmakers?
Yeah, this is an interesting development, and we'll see where it goes, because President Trump's trade policies have caused some anxiety among both Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill. There are lawmakers in both parties who have worried about the tariffs that he has proposed. They have worried about some of his more protectionist trade policies. And so we'll see where this goes and whether congressional Republicans, who are only, a couple of months from the midterm elections, are going to want to move on this, are going to want to punt this until after the election, and how they deal with it. And how they do, I think, will tell us a lot about whether they're going to embrace this on the campaign trail or whether they're not going to embrace it.
Well, in addition to Arizonans mourning the passing of Senator John McCain, there is a competitive primary election in Arizona Tuesday night to decide the Republican nominee for Senator Jeff Flake's Senate seat. Now, President Trump has not endorsed a Republican in that race. How should we interpret that?
Well, it's interesting. This has been a challenging race for the president to deal with. I talked to a White House official for a story that I did last week on this, and it's been complicated, is the sense that I have gotten. You have somebody in Martha McSally, who is the favorite to win tomorrow night in this Republican primary. She's favored by the Republican establishment, and Trump has said nice things about her, but there are two other candidates in the race that Trump also has connections to, and one of them is Joe Arpaio, the controversial sheriff who he pardoned. And of course, there's Kelly Ward, the former state legislator who Trump has praised in the past. So this is a race that has been complicated for Trump because he has connections to all three of these candidates and justifications for backing any of the three of them. And so as a result, he has stayed out of it. And what we've seen in his absence is that all three of these candidates are presenting themselves as the Trump favorite. We've seen McSally do it, we've seen Arpaio do it, and we've seen Kelly Ward do it. They've all touted themselves as the Trump choice, even though, of course, as you mentioned, Elaine, he's not made an official endorsement in this primary.
Well, more broadly, Sean, what are lawmakers on Capitol Hill watching for in Tuesday night's primary races?
Well, the two big races that Republican leaders are keeping an eye on is, of course, Arizona, which we just talked about, and they're pretty comfortable that McSally is going to win and give the party its best chance in that race. But, of course, there's also elections in Florida, primary elections tomorrow night. And the big race there is the governor's race, and Democrats feel like they have a chance to compete in this race. We'll see what the nominees end up being, but on the Republican side, the president's support for Ron DeSantis and DeSantis's closeness to Trump is going to be the latest test on the campaign trail of how popular Trump is in Republican primaries. All across the country this year, we have seen that when Trump endorses a candidate or Trump comes out against a candidate, it's a really powerful motivator, and those candidates that Trump backs tend to do really well because he's really popular in the Republican Party right now, even though he's a polarizing figure more broadly. So if DeSantis wins, that's the latest example of the power of President Trump's appeal in the Republican Party.
Yeah, we already saw some of that power in Florida when the president tweeted about Ron DeSantis. His numbers went up. All right, Sean Sullivan, thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Elaine.